Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of IA's Jock Talk. We're pleased to be joined by Tim McKone of NBC 10 Providence and 98.5 The Sports Hub. What's going on, Tim?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, it should be a lot of stuff going on, but let's start first with, how you got started and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to college, and originally I was actually a double major, communications and education. And I went to play Division III college basketball. And by my sophomore year, the coach was like, "Hey, you're really not good, so you should probably stop playing basketball." And so that was the end of my athletic career. And then I dove into a bunch of internships, and I interned at a radio station in Worcester, which is where I'm from originally. And so when I first graduated from college, I got lucky enough to get a job there. I did like traffic and weather in the mornings for the morning show, and then I did Worcester Sharks, which was the AHL team in Worcester at the time, like their intermission reports, and Holy Cross like football halftime and postgame and stuff. And so that's how I started. And then I got into TV in Worcester too at Charter TV3, which is the news station out in Worcester. Um, got lucky enough to come to NBC afterwards. And then, I mean, the 98.5 story I've told before with Matt McCarthy. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before, but my goal really, and it's a low bar looking back at it now, right? My career goal was to work in Boston radio. I loved it, right? I grew up listening to EI and all that stuff. And so they did the contest. I didn't know anyone in terms of like Boston media really, right? I loved it. So they did that contest. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. And I went, I got picked, and then they did a Final Four. They broke it down to 10 originally, then they did a Final Four, and Matt McCarthy was one of them. And so you went in and you did a half hour of radio with Hardy live at a bar, right? And at the end of it, they picked which one, and the winner got a job. And so I went second, and the bar was packed. You couldn't actually hear what anyone was saying. So I had a bunch of buddies that went to the bar to kind of support me and hang out and kind of see what the deal was. And I had a bunch of people listening on the radio too. And so people were texting in after the first person went, and then after I went, and they were like, "It's locked up. I think you have it. You were great." And then Matt McCarthy went third. And I got texts like 3 minutes into his thing. They're like, my friends were like, "You're not going to win. Like, there's no way. This kid's going to kill you." And they were right. He killed me. They picked him. And then I was lucky enough to get a call a few weeks later, and they asked me if I still was interested in doing some stuff. And I got really lucky, and I've been at 98.5 ever since. So I didn't win, which has kind of been a story of my whole career. Not usually finishing first, but it's worked out nonetheless. Yeah.
Well, then, that kind of inspires me a little bit because obviously, I'm a local guy myself. Ryan's a local guy. Uh, I actually went to one of the contest locations. It was actually the Charlie Horse in West Bridgewater, which is now Barrett. But,
Yep.
um, that leads us to present day stuff where let's get into some of the Patriot stuff because I think for the first time in months, I'm not embarrassed to be a Patriots fan. I still think they need, a quarterback. Ryan and I have gone back and forth many times about, whether they actually have one or not. I say they don't. I know you and Big Jim are, on the right side of history with, Tom and TB12, but, I like what they've done so far.
Yeah, me too. I got to be honest. I didn't see it coming the way that you knew that they were going to be busy in free agency, but I didn't think that they would, land Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. I did not see that coming. So, as surprised as I was that first day when it just felt like those moves kept coming in that first day of free agency, my jaw hit the floor when the Hunter Henry stuff came out the next day. I thought that was unbelievable. And I got to be honest, like, I thought the Smith and bringing in Aguilar and all the wide receiver moves was like a nice, but I didn't think it was enough. When you add Hunter Henry to the mix, and then this defense bringing back Van Noy, I think is a great move too. Like they're right there. I mean, they need a quarterback. You're right. Like they need someone that can actually throw the football. I don't think Cam's going to be that, but they have enough ammunition now to go up in the draft, I feel like, and trade up and snag one. Obviously, it's not going to be Trevor Lawrence or, Zach Wilson. But if you want like a Fields or a Trey Lance or, Mac Jones, if he's going to go early, you have the ammunition now to probably go up and get it because they don't have a lot of holes now on this team. And you go back and look at last year. I don't know how about you, but like, I actually thought it was a really good coaching job by Belichick because that roster sucked. Like they did not have good players last year up and down the roster. And that offense was brutal to watch. It wasn't just Cam. I mean, when you're like Jacoby Myers is your go-to guy, you're in a lot of trouble. So I'm not sure what they're going to get from N'Keal Harry. I think I tweeted it out. Like, unless they're in trade talks with the Mass Pirates, I'm not sure what teams are really interested in N'Keal right now, but we'll see.
I'd like to see him go to Arizona and do a 1-for-1 swap for Andy Isabella. I know that's
Bertrand's on that too. Yeah, bring back the UMass guy, right?
Yeah, but I'll let Ryan jump in here and complain about how we do have a quarterback.
I have a lot after that. All right, Cam Newton, defense or sticking up for. He was better pre-COVID than he was post-COVID.
He was. You're right. You're right.
I think there is something to this. He is still extremely talented, and you're right. He's not a traditional drop back and throw the ball guy. But I mean, would you rather have Andy Dalton? You know what I mean? The choices are so limited that we sort of have to do the best with the hand we're dealt. And I didn't see much of a better option than Cam Newton.
All right, so here's where I'm going to get emotional because the hand you were dealt, and I got to let it go at some point, but the hand you were dealt was self-inflicted because Brady never should have walked out the door in the first place, right? Brady should still be the quarterback of the New England Patriots, and I'll die on that hill. But to your point, in terms of the Cam stuff, I don't know how much he has left in the tank with that shoulder. That's the thing that concerns me because you're right. He did look good those first 2 weeks, and maybe it is the weapons, but some of those throws, like, I don't really care who you're throwing to. It wasn't close. But the one thing I'll say about Belichick and McDaniels is they're going to put Cam in the best position to be successful as possible. Like they're not one of those teams that like we do what we do and they're going to ask him to be Tom Brady. No, they're going to play to his strengths, and now they actually have weapons. So I would imagine it would look better. I just think you have a roster right now outside of the quarterback where you could make a deep run. And I just think your ceiling is not that high if it's Cam. I think you're still going to be a playoff team. I just think you need to bring in someone that can actually, again, throw the football, and that defenses are kind of scared that can hurt you if you're going to make that move. So I wouldn't hate drafting a quarterback in the first round, roll out Cam for a few weeks, and then hand it over to that rookie quarterback. And you look at it too. Oh, I was talking with Jones about this a few weeks ago. Pretty much, if you look at the guys that come in now at the quarterback position, you kind of know right away whether or not they can play. Russell Wilson as a rookie in Seattle. I mean, I know there are some outliers with, Jimmy G was behind Brady and Aaron Rodgers going back to 2005. But generally, like these guys come in, whether it's Joe Burrow before he got hurt or Justin Herbert, like you kind of know whether or not you have something. I guess Josh Allen's a bit of an outlier because I remember, I don't know about you guys, that first game that the Bills played the Patriots with Josh, I was like, this guy's might be the worst quarterback I've ever seen. And now he's pretty good. But yeah, so we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, I personally want Justin Fields because I think at 15, you can probably most easily trade up to 12 or 10 with, 15 and 46 and who knows, a combo of a player, but I think Fields is probably the most polished and most ready in an emergency situation. I mean, I suppose Trey Lance could be, possibly a poor man's Pat Mahomes, but we just don't know enough about him because he's only played 17 games and they only had one game last year. And yeah. I'm not sold on, anybody really beyond that because Mac Jones, I mean, is he a product of Alabama or is he, that good? So, but I like what they've done. I think they're going to be a more watchable product. I mean, granted, that's not saying much because last year it was abysmal.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk some hoop, Tim, if we could, because the Celtics are just god awful and disappointing right now.
Yeah, it's tough to watch. It's tough to watch. And, you come off of last year where, you can make the argument that just from an on-paper type situation, they probably should have beaten Miami and should have been a finals team. And I know you lose Gordon Hayward. I actually was a big Hayward guy. I thought that was a big loss. But the Kemba situation has kind of been worst case scenario in terms of the fears that you would have for bringing in an undersized point guard. The knee issue, I don't think obviously is going to go away. And then these two young guys, look, the ceiling is high for both of those guys. Jaylen Brown has taken another step forward this year. They're both, I think, top 20 players in the NBA. But that mix, there's something going on there where it does not look promising. And I know you can make the argument that, Tatum got COVID and, that, and then the Smart injury. And so, yeah, they haven't really had a full team in a while here, but I don't know. It doesn't look good. Let's see if they make a move coming up this week. I'm a huge trade deadline guy. I know the Harrison Barnes thing is kind of quieted down. Doesn't seem like Sacramento is going to want to trade him now. I was really high on that move earlier, but I do think they need to make a trade here in the next week, though, just to kind of shake things up a little bit. But who knows? You see this like Indiana Brad Stevens stuff today. I mean, maybe that's the shakeup you're going to get, where you're going to lose your coach to Indiana here in the next few hours. We'll see.
Is that back as being a real possibility? Because I thought he came out and said definitely not.
He didn't, but now there's some reports out on Twitter, and who knows, as Jim Murray would say, maybe it's brown checkmark stuff, but that some people are starting to float that out, that maybe that's gonna actually happen. So we'll see. You don't generally see guys that are established in the NBA go back. I mean, just from talking to college coaches, because again, I love college basketball. Like, it's really hard when your professional career depends on like decisions by 16 and 17-year-old kids and whether or not you can get them. And so like, yeah, the NBA is a grind, but college basketball is tough. It's tough sledding too. So it's kind of pick your poison. I never thought, and just from talking to people that really know him well, that he was interested in going back. So I would be surprised if he went back to the college game. But it seems like it's picking up steam here today. So we'll see.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I know, Tim, you're probably going to kill me for this later, but I think Tatum is actually more of a problem than people want to acknowledge. Not in terms of talent, but in terms of attitude. And I say that because when you watch him, just go and score. Don't always look for the foul, because you're not going to get it in today's NBA unless you're, a 20-year vet, or unless you get, decapitated, because athletes are too good and too long. And, just go to the hoop, score some, do what you're good at, which is being athletic. Don't be a politician. And I have long been one of the guys that says get Marcus Smart out of town. His shooting ability is atrocious. It's ugly to watch, and he shouldn't be allowed to shoot within like anything outside of 3 feet of the basket. But that's just me.
That's what my coaches used to tell me too. So I get those rules. Hey, this is what happens when you build around a Duke guy, man. Krzyzewski and those frauds at Duke. Yeah, I'm not surprised by this. I'll tell you that right now. As a UConn guy, those are the guys you want to build around. Yeah, the Tatum stuff's going to be interesting moving forward. I'm actually a Marcus Smart guy. I think you kind of need that edge on your team. And I've gone to wars with Jones about this, because Jones is in your camp, thinks it's overrated. But give me a guy like that over someone that doesn't seem like they care. And I know that some of it's, you could argue it's fake toughness, but I do think you need kind of that edge if you're going to compete. And you saw that they lost a little bit of that when he was down with that injury. So we'll see moving forward, but they need a shakeup. You're 100% right. There needs to be something here in the next couple of weeks. And this season is probably lost to begin with, but who knows though? I also thought that the Brooklyn stuff was going to be off the rails, and it looks like they're probably going to win the championship. So what the hell do I know?
Oh God, Tim, please don't tell me that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Ryan and I go back and forth about this all the time. He's a big Marcus Smart guy and big chemistry guy, but I don't like him. I think Danny needs to cash in the chips and do something. And I get it. The trade player exception is probably going to be more valuable in the offseason because you're probably going to have more assets to go after. But at some point, how much longer can you accumulate, theoretical draft stock and have it turn into nothing?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And moving forward, they're going to have to start making some moves because you're right. Eventually, and people have pushed back in a little bit, but you're not that far away from Jaylen Brown and Tatum. I know that the extensions kick in. Tatum's kicks in after this year, but we've seen Anthony Davis 2 years left on the deal, wanted out. So that you got to start being competitive relatively soon, and make one of those moves that kind of gets those guys intrigued. It seems like Bradley Beal is going to be an off-season trade now, so maybe you can figure something out there, but. Yeah, we'll see moving forward. It's tough too. I'm a chemistry guy. I'm with Ryan. I am a chemistry guy. I thought Kyrie Irving and all that was example A of why chemistry matters. Again, shocker, Duke guy. But the smart stuff is tough because he's not your best player. But if your best player is like a Kyrie Irving or someone like that, you're not going to go far. The problem is now he's on the team with 2 all-world players too. So if you're trying to build around a guy like a Kyrie and stuff, I don't think it's going to work with chemistry. Chemistry matters. I'll go to my grave saying that chemistry matters. I'm firmly in that camp. Yeah.
Well,
I think there's a lot of issues with the Celtics right now. I do not think Jason Tatum is one of them. I think he is probably the biggest bright spot along with Jaylen Brown, who also is a very good player. These are kids. They're 24 and 22. We're putting a lot of pressure on them to do well. And I mean, they've had short careers and they've done really well so far. I mean, I agree. We need to keep them happy. We need to keep them here. We need to build around them. And I don't know why you hate Marcus Smart so much. He does throw up cringeworthy shots. You do that a few times a game with him because he just chucks something up and hits nothing. That's my bad. That's at least twice a game. But otherwise, he's playing great defense. He's a leader. He makes big shots too. I mean, I don't know why you hate him so much.
Well, I'll tell you what turned it around for me so negatively in terms of Marcus Smart was, and Tim, you might remember this earlier in the year, Peyton Pritchard, who we knew nothing about. And, he goes and hits a game-winning shot, and Marcus is seen off to the side complaining to a referee where the rest of the team is, celebrating that Peyton cleaned up the garbage and, did the dirty work. And, I think Marcus sometimes thinks that he's bigger than he is in terms of attitude and ability. And look, he's a junkyard dog defensively. That part I like, but you need 5 guys playing defense. And that's the other thing with Tatum. I haven't seen a lick of defensive integrity
for Tatum
since the bubble last year.
For Tatum?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Have you not been watching the games? He's an excellent
I have been watching the game, but I don't like the way this team looks. I don't like the way they operate. I mean, they're a 500 team, and they're lucky to be 500, to be honest. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's something wrong with that mix. I think a lot of it too is there is not a lot of talent coming off that bench, and I nerd out on the NBA draft, and look, I'll be the first one to tell you that really, it's a crapshoot in the late 20s. The only people that really know about those names are people that follow it, because generally they don't turn into anything. Everyone always points to Tony Parker went in the late 20s, or Draymond went in the second round, and yeah, you know why you know that? Because generally people in the late 20s and Draymond Green doesn't pop in the second round. It doesn't happen, but you got to get something. And whether it's Romeo Langford last year, I know the injury this year has kind of stunted it, but that seems like a miss at this point. Grant Williams doesn't really do it for me. So I don't know. It would have been nice if you could have gotten some legitimate rotational players here with some of those picks, and that really hasn't happened. And that's been a killer, I think, for the Celtics as well. And look, you can make fun of Gordon Hayward all you want. That was a big loss for the Celtics team, I'm telling you, because right now it would be awesome. Really what they need is Gordon Hayward, right? They need another wing that can kind of not only create his own shot, but get other players involved. And that's a huge missing piece. And it's unfortunate that it just kind of never worked out with Hayward here, because he has been really, really good in Charlotte.
There has been some bad luck with Horford leaving and Hayward.
100%.
I'm a little more bullish on the Celtics this year. I think Time Lord is really starting to come into his own. And I think Romeo Langford, if we can get him healthy, I think he's a player. I mean, from what I saw, he seems like he can play. Right there could be the little boost that we would need. But then the trade exception, I hate to be in that position where you feel like you have to make a trade, but they kind of need to make a trade here. And that's always tough, because I know he's been waiting for the right deal, Danny, but looks like he needs to pull the trigger on something.
Yeah.
What about bringing back Isaiah Thomas?
I'm out on that. I have zero interest in doing that.
Oh,
Yeah. No.
Tim, you're killing me.
No, that's my least favorite. That's my least favorite move that people talk about. I want no part of that moving forward. I would actually be more interested. You know, there was some stuff out there. I forget who it might have been Brian Robb. He was talking about how you could potentially use that trade exception to bring back Al Horford. And that does two things, right? Number one, Horford gives you a little something up front that you don't necessarily have. I know he's not the same player, but more importantly, he then becomes an expiring contract after this year. So essentially what you're doing is extending that trade exception that you have by bringing back Horford. You know what I mean? So you get kind of an extra piece, but you also have that money that you can then use in the trade moving forward too. So I don't know. There's some options out there for Ainge if he gets creative. Again, the Harrison Barnes one I was all about, because what's interesting with the Harrison Barnes thing, and what really sold me on it, is that his deal is up the same time that Kemba's is up, which is a year before Jaylen Brown is up, which means you could then go get a max guy, bring him in, and I forget who that free agency class is. I think it's Jokic. I'm going to blank on who else. It's a loaded class. There are some max players that are going to be available. So if you can land one of those guys the year before Brown is up and 2 years before Tatum's up, well, now you can build that super team with the three big guys and hopefully lock those two guys in long-term for extensions. So it kind of created a path to be successful long-term and bring that next guy in too, while also being competitive with Harrison Barnes for the next couple of years. So we'll see what Ainge does, but there are some options out there.
I wonder if Ainge is thinking sort of the way I'm thinking, which is, you're right, they have signed extensions, but we need to keep these guys here. We need Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to re-sign once this deal is up. And I think the key to keeping Jason Tatum is Bradley Beal. I mean, that's who he wants to play with. And I could absolutely see him, after this extension goes, going and playing with Bradley Beal, or even going and playing with Jaylen Brown someplace else. You know, we've learned over the past few seasons, there's nothing keeping people in Boston that people will just leave at the first opportunity.
It's crazy. Yeah, we had a caller. I was filling on Telegram Maz, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and someone was like, "Oh, you know, because I said you need to keep both these guys happy." The Kyrie thing was a disaster because obviously he walked out the door, and they're like, "Oh, it hasn't happened. That doesn't happen all the time. Look at Kevin Garnett." I'm like, that's apples and oranges, because number one, the Kevin Garnett signed an extension before he got here. It was a different time in the NBA, so they locked him in long term before he even got here. And then number two, it was really before the player empowerment era, when all of these guys were leaving. Like, I feel like LeBron kind of kicked that off in the 2010 offseason. Prior to that, you know, Kevin Garnett would not have been in Minnesota for as long as he was if he was playing basketball right now. So different times, and I'm with you. Like, you need to make sure that these guys are happy and feel like they can win in Boston long term, because otherwise, you're right, they're going to walk out the door.
Well, you know, Tim, I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to thank you, first of all, for joining us. And, you know, any advice that you would have for anybody trying to get into this business? I mean, certainly we touched on it in the beginning, And, then I have one last Red Sox thought, which, you brought up LeBron. So that's just craziness to me, but I guess it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So my advice, honestly, and I did this, is I just did as many internships as I could. You just try to make as many contacts as you possibly can. And then, the biggest thing in this is just reps, right? And that's really what it comes down to, because whether it's talking on the radio or being on TV, it's kind of an uncomfortable setting, and you need to be comfortable. Does that make sense? So it's kind of being on TV and under lights and wearing makeup is not a natural thing. And the job is to try to look natural while doing it. And that just comes with repetitions and doing it a lot. And one of the cool things now that you guys have that I didn't really have is like the ability to just do podcasts, which is essentially just radio. You guys are doing the same thing we're doing. And so the fact that you can just do that by yourself is already a huge leg up from what I had, because that wasn't really around, right? So, I was doing intermission reports that no one was listening to. And that team moved 6 months after I got that job, probably because of my intermission reports, right? So, I would say just make as many contacts as you possibly can. And whether that's through internships or having people on your podcast and staying in touch with them. And then also just reps. It's not a hard job. If I can do it, I promise you anybody can do it. So it's really just, continuing to work at it, and then realizing that, there's a lot of hours that go into it too. And it's going to be kind of a weird schedule. It's not a normal 9-to-5 job, but, people aren't going to have a lot of sympathy for you too when you're getting paid to talk about the Patriots, right? So, there are some sacrifices that come with it, but overall it's tough to beat. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Tim,
not getting paid a lot. I can't stress that enough, by the way, too. You
no.
are getting paid to watch the Patriots. You are not getting paid a lot to watch the Patriots, but unless you're Mike Felger, that's probably the exception.
Well,
right?
Felger's been in this business for, as long or if not longer than I've been alive. So
Yeah.
that says quite a bit about, the grind that he had to put in.
Yeah.
And obviously we had Maz on about a month ago, and he said basically the same thing. It's all about a grind and just keeping the hard work going. So again, thanks for joining us, Tim. We'd love to do this again,
Tim,
months down the road. And
quick question for Tim. If I could, quick question for Tim. Where can people find you?
So my full-time job is at NBC 10 in Providence. And then I'm at 98.5 and kind of float in and out when I can grab shifts when it's allowed. Usually on the middays is usually most of the time, most of the shifts I can do, sometimes some Felger and Maz. And I actually I tell people this all the time. My favorite show to do is with Jones at night. I love doing that night show. It's fun. It's a little different. So 98.5 a fair amount, and then on the weekends too, obviously. And then you can find me on Twitter at Tim_McKone. There are not a lot of serious takes on Twitter from me, but I do interact and stuff. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, Tim, thanks for all your help. And, obviously when we get this all, primed and ready to go, we'll send you a copy and, we'll get it out there.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, guys. Let's do it again. I mean that. This was fun.
Thanks a lot.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I'll see you guys.
Attention Massachusetts young adults. East Bridgewater-based nonprofit Independence Associates wants to work with you on employment, life, and social skills 100% free of charge over Zoom. Click Get Started at iacil.org.
I just want to take a moment to thank Tim McKone for joining us today. A lot of insightful information. Certainly the debate of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and the Celtics dilemma will continue. But the lead story of the week, the lead story of the month thus far, has been the total rebranding. I don't even want to call it a rebuild. It's a total rebranding of the Patriots, which, by the way, I forgot to mention this with Tim, but for any New England Patriots fan or any football fan that wants to believe that Tom Brady's exit and subsequent success had nothing to do with this, I think then that you're respectfully, I think that you're dead wrong. I don't
So
know.
Brian, you have Bill Belichick sitting in his office, just steaming anger over Tom Brady going to the Bucs, winning, and he's like, I'm gonna bankrupt this team. I'm gonna max out the salary cap. I'm gonna do everything I can to win in the next couple of years, and that's it. That's what you have.
No, I'm just saying. I think that to act as if Brady's subsequent success had zero to do with it is irresponsible. I'm not saying that was the motivation. I'm just saying that, you know, let's not kid ourselves. Belichick is a guy who prides himself on, reputation and perception. And the perception, quite frankly, last year was that they stunk
Well, they
because
did.
it was fact.
Yeah.
And, having the scrutiny of the greatest athlete that this town and the NFL as a whole has ever seen walk out the door for basically, nothing compared to what you could have been paying all these years. You're not going to tell me from a human element standpoint that that didn't motivate him somewhat, because he's like, well, now they're, crying about Brady's gone and, he's winning. And because it's always been about the Brady versus Belichick debate.
Well, I mean, I guess in sports talk radio land, but I mean, they did a lot together. They're the greatest coach player tandem in the history of sports. I don't think there's any real second place to that. Belichick is a great coach, and he's a really smart guy. And he put the team in a position where we were in such good shape, salary cap wise, we could go on this spending spree. I think Belichick in the past, it's sort of the Moneyball technique of you go for what's undervalued in the market. And before it used to be, the bargain shopping at the end of free agency, those, you weren't going to sign the A- A players, but you could get a B- B player in the, at the league minimum or, a little bit above that and fit them in. This seems to be a departure from that, which is an understanding that we need to get out there and spend more money. But the salary cap went down this year, and not a lot of teams are spending money. A lot of teams are cutting people because they didn't plan as well as the Patriots did. And the Patriots came in with the cap space. They came in a market where you could buy more. There wasn't as much competition for these players, and they're spending their money, and he's got a plan, and we're going to see what happens. It's been one season. Let's
Time out.
postpone the obituary for Bill Belichick.
Hot take, timeout. I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. But to say that this was a plan, I'm not so sure that this was the ultimate plan, because let's be honest, free agency, Bill's always been pretty creative with free agency, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts of this thing. If Brady had, or if Belichick had drafted better, there wouldn't be as many craters on the roster right now as we speak. So, it kind of speaks to, I think the real plan was to hopefully draft and develop better. And they haven't had a Pro Bowler since like 2013. I think Jamie Collins was the last drafted Pro Bowler that they actually had.
Okay.
As a guy that they developed. But we'll see. I mean,
all right, can I comment on that? So yeah. You're right. The drafting has been poor, but drafting is a lot of luck. All right. I think that has been shown mostly over time that when it comes to drafting NFL players, it's maybe 25% skill, 75% luck, and what Belichick has consistently done is to trade down to get more picks, more lottery tickets. It hasn't always worked out. And when he stayed or moved up, he hasn't been right. We talked about last time with Maz, the DK Metcalf versus N'Keal Harry thing. I mean, that's a bad one. And you're right, the drafting has been poor. The planning, Brian, comes into having the cap space to go out and have this kind of offseason, because very few other football teams have the kind of cap space where they could go out and the ability to attract these types of players to come and play on this team. New England, I think Belichick has shown this is still a place that people want to play. I know there's all this stuff that came out. Nobody likes Belichick, and Gronk and Brady were just trying to get away from Belichick. But I think that that's not necessarily the case, as a lot of people are coming here to try to win, because this is a place you can still win.
I mean, I think the one thing for me that it still shows is, and you just touched on it, people still want to come here. People, want to play for Belichick. And I mean, let's not be lost on the fact that, in professional sports and in any job, really, I mean, money does talk. As much as people want to say that it doesn't, I mean, I don't care what job you're in. If McDonald's A pays more than McDonald's B, you're going to go work for McDonald's B, or McDonald's A, rather.
Unless you get free food and,
Well, but again, that's the, signing bonus, as it were.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is that they've done a lot. But again, we touched on this earlier with Tim. They need to go get a young, affordable, quarterback, because
Why didn't Belichick think of that? A young, great, affordable quarterback who will be great for 20 years.
I'm not sure that Cam is going to last.
No, he's not, but he's a stopgap. And then it's what Tim was saying, hopefully to use a draft pick and develop somebody. Can we agree Jarrett Stidham is not the answer, Brian?
Long term?
Long term, short term, any term.
Long term, we can agree. I really, with what they've built around him now, I wouldn't be opposed to throwing Stidham in there.
He hasn't shown any ability to lead an NFL team. Maybe he's been saving it, but I think it goes back again. I think Tim made a lot of great points. You can tell, not always, but usually pretty soon, pretty quickly, you get an idea of, okay, this person can play. There are exceptions. The Josh Allen one that he listed is a good one. Carson Wentz is another one who looked really good at first and really can't play. There's RG3.
Or Robert Griffin III.
Right. But usually these days, you can get an idea of who can play, because playing quarterback is a lot more than being able to throw a football. It's way more than that. There are 1,000 guys who can throw a football way down the field. It comes down to everything else. What's between your ears? The reads, staying calm under pressure, dealing with the rush, all of these things that some people are just able to do it and some can't, but you don't know who can do it until you get them in training camp, until you get them on the field. And going out and getting Cam Newton is Bill Belichick screaming on him with a megaphone that Jarrett Stidham is not the guy. And I trust Bill Belichick's opinion on this more than I do yours. No offense.
You should. He gets paid $25 million a year. I heard. But two of the three things that you mentioned, being able to throw the ball and make reads, I don't think Cam does those as well anymore as that warrants the type of attention that he's gotten. Now, granted,
got a 1-year contract. It is a stopgap. It is to find somebody else and hopefully develop them. But you say we should just go out and get an affordable young quarterback who's good. Yeah, that would be nice. And you should go out and get a supermodel wife. It's a little harder to do than it is to talk about it. This is the thing that has eluded several NFL franchises for basically their entire existence. It's hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, I would have rather had Mitchell Trubisky or,
What did Mitchell Trubisky show you that makes you think that is the guy?
Again,
I can tell you what he showed Bill Belichick. Absolutely nothing. That's why he's backing up Jarrett Allen in Buffalo, and he's not on the Patriots. That's why we went and repaid Cam Newton because Bill Belichick looked at Mitchell Trubisky and said, that guy sucks.
But can we agree that Belichick's arrogance does get the best of him sometimes?
Of course he's arrogant. He's super successful. If you were the best in the world at something, you would be arrogant too. That's why when you talk about LeBron being arrogant or Jason Tatum being arrogant, of course they're arrogant. They're the best in the world at what they do. How do you not be arrogant? Try being the best in the world at something and then staying super humble. You can act humble. You know, you get the quarterbacks, like the Russell Wilson, like, I act perfectly. He's arrogant too. He's just not outwardly arrogant. There's a difference. You have to have that confidence. It's such a competitive ecosystem that you need to have that confidence, that undying belief in yourself to be successful.
I mean, I don't know. I look at it and go, we need to do something. Now, I will go on the record today, March 19th, 2021, and, openly say that there is a chance that Cam Newton could, with a full training camp, turn it around and do something, completely different. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that the talent that he has around him now is 10 times better than what he was dealing with last year, but
he has weapons. He's going to have some weapons at least. Jacoby Myers is not a number one receiver. He's barely a number two receiver, right? He cannot be the focal point of an offense in the NFL.
No, he's more of a gadget guy. And I think now you have Kendrick Bourne, you have Nelson Aguilar, which Aguilar is, for my money, the X factor in this situation, because
if he can catch,
he can play both the slot and the outside. Really, let's not lose Edelman, or let's not lose sight of what Edelman may or may not be able to do, because if he comes back, that's gonna push everybody.
How old is Edelman now? 36?
34, 35.
I think it is foolish to expect anything from Julian Edelman. Like, anything that we get from him is a complete bonus.
Well, that's what I was saying. I don't expect anything from him. I'm just saying let's see what's in the cards for him, because if he's able to contribute anything, then you're pushing other guys into their more natural positions. And I think Jonnu Smith is probably one of the most underrated signings on this team, because he can play both the blocking tight end and he can play the F move tight end, which, for the non-football people, that's more of the Aaron Hernandez motion tight end type.
Great example, Brian.
Well, I mean, that's what it was built for when they started using the two tight end system with him and Gronk. Of course, then Gronk morphed into something all his own. So, and we know what Hernandez morphed into.
What was that?
But that being said, I like what they've done, and honestly, something we didn't even talk about was the re-signing of David Andrews, which is great because their offensive line is easily now a top 10 offensive line in the league.
I mean, I take, when it comes to the line, the offensive line, I take people's word for it who know what they're talking about. If Dante Scarnecchia likes somebody, I like him too. I couldn't tell you enough about technique and all that stuff. I don't think any of us can really. If the people who know about it like them, then I like them too.
Attention Massachusetts young adults. East Bridgewater-based nonprofit Independence Associates wants to work with you on employment, life, and social skills 100% free of charge over Zoom. Click Get Started at iacil.org.
If we could touch on the Celtics as we as we.
Oh God, you and your basketball.
Basketball is my favorite sport. I won't sing the song. I am more bullish on this team than you and Tim. I think there is a chance to salvage this season. I think Jason Tatum is a top 12 player in the NBA right now. For a 22-year-old, that's pretty good. And I think he has the chance to be a top 5 player in the next few years, the next few seasons. Jaylen Brown, he sort of seemed to peak a little bit. He's maybe coming back down to earth a little bit lately, but he's still excellent. If he's your second best player, you have the foundation of a championship team. The problem has been everyone else. Everybody else has been the problem,
including Marcus.
Marcus Smart, when healthy, is an asset. He is an asset. He is somebody you want on the court at the end of a game. He is. I think the biggest issue, and I'm a Kemba Walker fan, and I was going to say this to Tim when he was talking about UConn versus Duke. Kemba Walker was a great player. I think he still could be a great player, but with his knee, it's just not the same. And when you're paying someone that much money, it's not good. We need to figure out a way to reallocate that money in a better way.
Well, off of what you just said about Kemba, I think Kemba has become the new Al Horford, in the sense that Al Horford was never truly a max contract player guy. He was a max contract player in terms of money and contract only, but to expect him to be a max level player was, dare I say, irresponsible. And I think to a certain degree, Kemba's fallen victim to the contract, because that money, puts a lot of pressure on him, puts a lot of pressure on the knee. And you're right, he can be a great player, but he's gonna have to, much like they always talk about baseball players having to reinvent themselves. He's gonna have to reinvent the way he plays. You're not gonna get the Kemba that you paid for, 2 years ago, because that knee is just not gonna hold up. So I think Kemba almost became another victim of the max contract slot. Because I don't believe that he was ever really a max. He's a nice complementary piece. But
I think when he signed the contract, he was a max guy. I think since then his health has deteriorated to the point where he is no longer anywhere close to what he was when he first started. I mean, if you remember the first half of his first season with the Celtics, he was excellent.
Yes, he was
excellent. And it's been related to his health. He's also very positive. He's always smiling. He's a great team guy. I mean, he's a guy you want on your team. He's a guy, he could be a starting point guard on a championship contender, but he can't be a starting point guard on a championship contender making, what does he make? $30-something million a year and chewing up such a big part of the salary cap. I said it to Tim. I really think that Danny Ainge is thinking of how can I get Bradley Beal on this team, because that is the best way to keep Jason Tatum here and happy. If we can't do that, I'm all in on trading for John Collins in Atlanta, and as long as we can give him a max extension, as long as that can be done, I'm for that. Otherwise, we're in a tough spot here to get better. I mean, I think back to the Miles Turner trade that could have been the Miles Turner, Doug McDermott for Gordon Hayward trade that could have been that we didn't do. And I don't know, Miles Turner might have been what this team needed.
Well, I'll touch on 2 last Celtics points. One of which is, because I know you're a big Jaylen Brown guy. If you get Bradley Beal at the expense of Jaylen Brown, are you then willing to give up Jaylen Brown? Or are you forever married to Jaylen? That's the first question.
I would rather keep Jaylen Brown than trade him for Bradley Beal, because
Bradley Beal obviously is a better offensive player, but Jaylen Brown is a two-way player. And I don't know what is wrong with the Celtics defense this year, but I do know it's not Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's fault. Whatever is wrong with it.
Well, I mean, I just think that the whole vibe is different this year, and to put it on one or two guys is kind of irresponsible and stupid. But I guess the biggest thing that we should watch out for, and kudos to Tim for sort of breaking this on our program, is apparently the Brad Stevens to Indiana stuff is picking up steam.
By the time I get this edited, I think we're going to be airing this and people are going to say, see, that didn't happen. That's crazy. Or I'm going to look stupid and people are going to be looking at him sitting in a red shirt next to Bobby Knight, smiling at the IU cameras.
Well, I mean, either way, it's something that's got to get thrown out there. So
yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think his job is safe. I think Danny Ainge's job is safe, and I think that's what makes the Celtics such a good franchise. It's that consistency in those positions. It's the teams that are bouncing back and forth between, we got to get rid of the old regime's people for our guy. It's those teams that are the ones that have the most trouble. They're consistent. I still think Danny Ainge has done a very good job. I think Brad is a good coach. And it's been a tough year, but there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of talent on this team. And I think also if we can get Romeo Langford back and healthy, I think he could be a really good piece.
Well, time will tell.
Time will tell.
We really haven't seen anything out of Langford yet, I don't think. I mean,
just little flashes where he looked good.
Right. But let's get these guys healthy. Let's see what they look like, even 2 weeks from now. All I know is Boston's very impatient, and 2020 is not a good record, for the amount of talent that they have on that roster.
For sure.
At least with the starting five. Now Tim mentioned it. There needs to be something else to complement, the bench. I definitely disagree with Tim. Respectfully, I think that IT would be, a tremendous asset.
We don't need another black hole on defense. We need people who can play serious defense, in my opinion. Unless it's like a Bradley Beal, like a generational offensive talent.
Well, that's the problem. Generational offensive talents are hard to come by.
They are. And Isaiah Thomas is no longer the type of player that I think can help this team. I do think he could definitely catch on a team and be like the eighth guy off the bench or something and help out. But I don't see it as a fit here, unfortunately. We need somebody who can play two ways. It's not like if we were having that thing that we've had in Boston for a long time before these players of that, trotting out the second unit and not being able to buy a bucket. If we had one of those teams, maybe Isaiah Thomas would be a guy that you would think about bringing in, but we don't have that problem. We have problems getting stops right now.
Yeah, well, the old adage is defense wins championships, and
Isaiah Thomas isn't part of that solution for sure.
Yeah, no. So it'll be interesting because the Celtics are just a game and a half ahead of the playoff line.
They're gonna make the playoffs. Don't worry. They will make the playoffs.
I mean, they might make it, but I don't know.
Or they don't make it and we get a lottery pick. It's a good draft.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't make it, it'll be a massive disappointment.
Oh, yeah. If they don't make the playoffs, then probably Brad Stevens will get fired. I think that'll probably happen.
Oh, that might be the most aggressive take Mr. Ryan McLeod has had in the history.
I didn't say I would fire him. I said that it might happen because I think Danny will start feeling the pressure and, you don't get rid of yourself.
He should feel the pressure already. He needs to make a move. We can't have another deadline of sit and wait and play tiddlywinks. We can't do it.
You got to trust in the process and trust in Danny to make the best decision. And he's earned that trust. He's earned that trust, at least to me. He made
It's one championship in 17 years.
He made a great trade for KG. He made a great trade for Kyrie, even though it didn't work out. That was an excellent, excellent, excellent trade for Boston, even though, we know how it ended and we know how it went, but Kyrie is a great talent, and you go for talent and you hope it works. We didn't know it wasn't going to work, right? We've had Gordon walk away. We've had Al Horford walk away. Those are tough. We wanted both of those guys, all three of those guys, to re-sign, and they all just left for nothing. But he put us in the position where we had them, and he drafted Jaylen Brown and he drafted Jason Tatum. And there's a lot of problems on this team right now, but I feel confident with Danny making the decisions. That's me.
Well, as we wrap this up on this episode, as always, we want to, thank you to the listeners, to the subscribers. Certainly, again, shout out to Tim McKone. And, if you guys want to get involved either in front of the camera or behind the camera, and let us know, reach out to us at social@iacil.org, and let's keep this train going. And it should be a rather interesting offseason, definitely, for the Patriots. And by the time we do this again, hopefully the Celtics will have done something to improve their chances.
Bryan, let's do our next episode after the trade deadline, and we'll either come on here and talk about the great move that Danny Ainge made, or we'll come on here and trash them for doing nothing as they slide into mediocrity.
As they so often do.
We will have to see.
Yes, we will have to see. But again, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ryan, for being the level-headed co-host as always. And we will see you again soon.